I think it is a hunger in our hearts to see what happened before. How can you know what's going to happen today if you don't look back to what happened yesterday?
Any form of art is important to our cultural history, but we think film, especially, is showing a time and place. They record what places looked like at the time, and they just give a very good cultural record of what survives. Cologne is basically a home movie made about Cologne, Minnesota, a small town, I think, of about 300 people back in the late 30s when it was filmed.
It has like a full circle of life from the agriculture and people's enjoyment of life, you know, the hard work, and that just created a full spectrum of what it was like at that time.
About 80% of films made before 1930 no longer exist. And I think 50% before 1950 shows you how much has already been lost. We're here at the Packard campus of the Library of Congress. It's the National Center for Audiovisual Preservation. We house the audiovisual collections of the Library of Congress, recorded sound, film, television, in all formats from all eras in each of those categories. We have about 3.5 million recordings, you know, several 100,000 films, and just countless stuff keeps coming in. We're trying to create a registry of what we think are important American films, not necessarily the best American films or anything like that, but just films which do resonate and continue to resonate as important artifacts in American history and culture. It was something created by Congress back in 1989 when they had the colorization controversy of people colorizing black and white films. And they set up the National Film Preservation Board to choose 25 films each year for the National Film Registry. Beginning in 1992, the colorization issue was settled outside the library and the board, done by the industry and the filmmakers. And we focused on preservation efforts since then. Well, the registry does contain well-known American classics from Casablanca.
You knew how much I loved you. How much I still love you.
To famous westerns such as Stagecoach and The Searchers. And famous horror films, Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein. The way Congress set up the National Film Registry, it was meant to reflect America's film heritage. And we define America's film heritage very broadly, not just Hollywood films, but also documentaries, silent films, films of the avant-garde. Home movies can often be just as important as some Hollywood films. Along with all the famous films we added that year, we added an orphan film called Cologne, from the Diary of Ray and Esther, a good visual record of the small town of Cologne, Minnesota in the late 30s.
Well, it was a film made by a lady that lived in Cologne, and she was writing a diary. It was her life and how she liked it here, and they were about to move on, and this was the legacy that she left.
I was born in 1941 on a farm south of here, a dairy farm. And if you see the depiction in the Cologne movie where they talk about the new modern conveniences, they have a hay rack with tracked horses and a hay loader in the behind. That was one of my first work experiences. I was old enough to steer the well-trained horses to go around the windrow, and Dad would pile the hay over me until we got the whole hay rack full.
I probably would say it was a one-horse town. The farmers came to town to get things, and sometimes the wife came along and went to the grocery store. The old city hall had a bowling alley in the basement. There was a little bit of recreation. Friday nights they'd have a film on the street for the kids. My husband talks about the time he went in the grocery store and they usually gave the kids a little bag of candy to take home. It was a very simple life. That's what small town America was in those days, and the farm area.
It's a very tightly edited, very nicely edited film. It's a good, case of showing realism of what the society was like. This is just a matter of fact, record of that town at the time.
Side of this building here is one of the treasures of Cologne. Actually was part of the movie back in 1939. It's our La France Brockway. It's a 1924 fire engine. We are working on restoring this beauty for the city. It did come here in 1925 as a brand new piece of equipment. Has stayed a part of our history ever since.
Fire department celebration in the summer was a big deal for us farm kids to come to town to see the parade and the civic celebration.
Small towns always had a parade, and that was the big thing, that everybody came to Cologne and watched the parade. Kids love parades. Today they throw candy out and everything, but in those days it was just a way to get together, to socialize.
I think that the film from 1939 and looking at Cologne today, there's a lot of things that I think have stayed the way they are. We're looking down Main Street. A lot of the buildings that were there then are still here now. The people there were just genuine, friendly, and willing to help. And that's the way Cologne is now.
This was the old Moorbucker's bar, and this is the bar that's featured in the Cologne film. Now it's the In-Town 2. It's been around since about late 1860s, and we're still here and still serving people, and they're very friendly, very, very warm, very caring. You can't meet a bunch of better people.
It's important that the generations beyond that see what life was like, and it was a hard life.
You can't tell what it is today without knowing what the past was. So when you get to share with people the things that happened in your lifetime, you put feeling in it when you tell people about your story of your hometown and your families and things.
This truck, like a lot of things, it's just a great piece of history, has a lot of stories to tell, and just by being here it tells another story of how our community is committed to history and also committed to the future.
The registry, when it was set up, the three criteria were culturally important, historically important, or aesthetically important. We work here to get the material in and preserve it in the best possible condition we can. And the good thing about film is that if you preserve it in a good state and you store it in the proper conditions, it will last for hundreds of years.